For decades, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan has been more than a line on a map. It has been a corridor of war, refuge, and shared history. In the 1980s, Pakistan became a vital base for Afghan resistance fighters battling the Soviet invasion, providing sanctuary, training, and logistical support. Later, as Afghanistan fractured into civil war, Islamabad hosted millions of refugees fleeing violence. That legacy of alliance and Afghan people's asylum at an unprecedented level shaped the region's politics. But it also became groundwork for decades of conflict that followed, as Afghanistan started blaming Pakistan for their own shortcomings. As international forces entered Afghanistan after 2001, Pakistan's role became complicated. On the one hand, it cooperated with global partners to eradicate militant groups from Afghanistan. Then, on the other hand, Pakistan plays host to millions of refugees from Afghanistan, seeking safe harbor from war-torn area, thus preventing a very large humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, militant groups found ways to exploit porous borders. Over time, Islamabad accused Afghan soil of harboring fighters who struck inside Pakistan, a narrative rooted in repeated attacks on Pakistani security forces and civilians, claiming thousands of lives via bombings and suicide attacks. The group most often cited by Islamabad is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, a militant faction that Pakistan says uses sanctuaries across the border to plan deadly operations. In the last 24 hours, that simmering tension turned into open confrontation. Pakistani military forces launched multiple air and artillery strikes inside Afghanistan, including reported hits in areas near Kabul, Kandahar, and eastern provinces, targeting what Islamabad claims militant training camps and leadership compounds. Pakistani officials say these strikes are precise, meant to disrupt plots against Pakistan's security, and have inflicted significant losses on militants. External reporting by global agencies confirms explosions and strikes in several Afghan districts, with smoke rising over targeted sites. But exact casualty figures, for fighters or civilians, remain unverified at this stage. Pakistan's defense ministry and government statements claim dozens to over 100 militant fighters were killed in these operations. Afghan authorities, now led by the Taliban government, counter that strikes have damaged civilian infrastructure and caused non-combatant casualties. Journalists on the ground have recorded damaged buildings and disrupted neighborhoods, though independent observers have not yet issued a consolidated casualty report. Conflicting reports regarding damages from both sides surfaced on social media. However, Pakistan backed those claims with releasing surveillance and video footages of damages and occupying checkposts, while Afghanistan solely relies on statements. Adding complexity to this crisis is a recent assessment referenced in regional reports, attributed to the Russian Foreign Ministry, that estimates between 20,000 and 23,000 militants active inside Afghanistan, including factions linked to ISIS-K, TTP, and other extremist networks. Pakistan has cited this number to bolster its case that Afghanistan has become a hub of cross-border threats. From Islamabad's perspective, these militant networks are not theoretical. They are the groups responsible for suicide bombings, ambushes, and high-casualty attacks inside Pakistan in recent years. Islamabad argues that unless Afghanistan takes stronger action against these groups, it must act unilaterally to defend its own territory. Afghan officials reject claims of state complicity, asserting that their forces have detained and fought foreign militants when possible, and that Pakistan's strikes violate Afghan sovereignty. Beyond claims and counterclaims, the human cost of this escalation is already visible. Videos and eyewitness reports show families fleeing border villages, markets abandoned as sirens wail, and border crossings choked with anxious travelers. Humanitarian observers warn that continued fighting could disrupt aid routes and strain already fragile communities. Strategically, this escalation carries risks far beyond the immediate battlefield. It threatens to destabilize a region still recovering from decades of war, to inflame Pakistan-India rivalries, and to complicate global counterterrorism efforts already stretched thin. As of this moment, independent verification of the full scale of damage and casualties from last night's strikes is not yet available. Verification typically requires on-the-ground access by neutral observers, something that takes time. Besides, Afghan Taliban does not give full access to international media for an unbiased reporting. What we do know is this: long-standing grievances over cross-border militancy have erupted into open military action. Pakistan frames its strikes as necessary self-defense against entrenched threats. Afghanistan decries attacks on its soil and calls for respect for sovereignty.
In the days ahead, the world will be watching to see whether diplomacy can break the cycle of violence, or whether this latest chapter marks a dangerous new spiral in a conflict that has already cost countless lives. NewsTold, truth beyond headlines.